Hello and welcome to the channel. I'm Nathan, and today's car review is going to be on this 2010 Volkswagen Golf Mark 6 GTI. Now, having been out on the road for about 15 years, I want to see if this GTI has held up or whether it's a forgotten memory. Starting off with the exterior at the front here, this is undoubtedly a GTI. I'm not saying that just because it has this nice red line here and the GTI badge. No, it has these lovely bi-xenon headlights here, and of course the little honeycomb lower grille and these really unique surrounds on the fog lights. Now, another cool thing about this generation in 2013, they did revise the headlights here, giving you a LED daytime running strip, which is pretty cool. And of course, if you want to make people think that this vehicle is newer, you could actually get some custom aftermarket Mark 7.5 Golf GTI headlights and put those in here, and a lot of people wouldn't be able to tell the difference. From the side, you cannot argue that this does not look just absolutely stunning, because the two-door variant of the Golf, although it may not be as practical as having the two additional doors, it looks fantastic, especially with that roof line, and of course that C-pillar and the way that glass just curves right into it looks absolutely beautiful. In terms of what you get here on the side, there's not a whole lot to mention. You do have these aftermarket 18-inch alloy wheels, which are a pain to clean, by the way, and of course the iconic red brake caliper, which just looks fantastic. And then up here, you do have the turn signal mounted into the side mirror, and that's pretty much it. At the back of the GTI, it looks just as lovely as every other angle on this vehicle, and that's because you have this nice extended spoiler here at the top. You do have these nice, lovely aftermarket LED taillights, which I do think look a lot better than the stock ones, and that's why you'll often see people change them out, usually for the R-style taillights, which are quite nice. And then, of course, you do have your nice, subtle GTI badge to remind people what you're driving at the end of the day. And then, of course, down here, you have at the bottom your plastic rear diffuser and your dual exhaust. If you watch my timing chain replacement video and other maintenance items I've done to this vehicle, then you'll know this engine very well. It's the infamous 2-liter 4-cylinder turbocharged TFSI engine, which is in a lot of other Audi Volkswagen products of this era. And this engine generates 200 horsepower and 207 foot-pounds of torque, which is pretty good for a vehicle of this size. And considering that this vehicle only weighs 3,100 pounds, it gets you from 0 to 60 in about 6.1 seconds. Now, some other common problems with this engine, of course, besides the timing chain, which is just often due to the original tensioner that they use giving up early on, was the actual intake manifold. Now, the intake manifold here, what often happens is the flaps don't open and close properly, causing it to give you a check engine light. It's kind of minor, but it can cause it to run poorly. Other than those two issues, there's nothing really else worth mentioning here, so let's check out the interior. Stepping in to the lovely GTI's interior here, the first thing you notice right off the bat is the seats. They hold you like no other seats I've ever sat in before. It's quite lovely. They feel high quality. This leather material is quite nice. Although you can have the tartan fabric upholstered seats, which are the sort of staple for the GTI in its heritage, these seats are just as lovely because they have this nice lovely embroidered logo here on the headrest. Now, in terms of just how they feel on a long distance drive, having driven this vehicle for quite some time now, I do think they are pretty comfortable and they get my seal of approval. Although you have many adjustments for the front seats here, you do have power 4-way adjustable lumbar on either front seats. You don't have the power tilt. If this was the 4-door model, you would get the power recline, which would make sense. Now, there are a number of things that set this apart from the regular Golf and make it its own GTI, and that of course is the black headliner here, which I want to say is held up just okay, because it definitely is sagging here in the back, which is very common in this generation. And of course, you have your lovely flat bottom steering wheel here with the GTI logo here in the center, and you also have that nice lovely red stitching as well. And then you do have this sort of, I want to say, not quite piano black trim. It's kind of unique. And then of course you have your nice lovely e-brake with the nice red leather stitching here, and then of course your shifter boot with the red stitching on there with your, I want to say, not iconic golf ball shifter, but it's decent as it is. But other things, it's pretty much just a regular Golf at that. It is quite nice and German, I want to say. It's very plain. The interior is nothing elaborate. There's no edginess to it. It's all sort of rounded and kind of pleasant, actually. I feel like it's kind of aged well, you know, having been about 15 years old now. In terms of just regular features here, you do have your lovely sunroof up here, and of course your sunglass holder and the controls for the sunroof. You do have these lovely vanity mirrors, which have lights on either side, which is not a surprise for a vehicle like this. But nonetheless, you do have extra things here which kind of make it feel a little bit more homey. You do have your automatic climate controls, and just like every Volkswagen product ever made since I can remember when, they give you heated seats, which is really nice. And of course, this being the upper trim model of the GTI, you do have the navigation system here, which of course is now dated. You can't update it anymore. But otherwise, there's not really much else to mention. I mean, it's just a nice sort of comfortable interior, of course, high quality. You know, everything feels good right at hand. You do have your nice extendable armrest here, and there's not really much to mention underneath there. You do have sort of a plug-in for your media system, and of course an aux cable right there if you actually use that anymore. Now let's go check out the rear seats and see what that's all about. Like every two-door vehicle that I review on my channel, I want to see how easy it is to get out of the rear seats. Again, heaven forbid have you have to carry somebody in the back of your two-door car. So let's see how easy it is now getting in. So I'm just using the handle here at the top, pulling that, sliding the seat forward. And getting in was not that bad. I'm about 32 years old and my back didn't feel it, so that was good. And I'm somewhat comfortable. Now getting out, is rather easy too. So this really gets a pass in my book. If you, again, have to carry somebody in the back seat of your two-door Golf GTI, you could definitely do so easily. Sitting in the back seat here, I'm pleasantly surprised how much space I have considering I'm 5'11" and I'm technically in a small car. But nonetheless though, this seat here, the passenger seat, is set to someone who's about my height, and it's pretty reasonable overall. I would say I'm pretty comfortable. I don't have to keep my legs out to the side like I would in some other two-door vehicles. And that I do have this nice cutout here so my knees don't get crushed. I can move my feet up and down nice and easily, which is quite nice. And of course, there's other little amenities in here in the back seat. You have these little pouches on either backs of the seat. You do have your own vents back here, and then of course cubbies on the either side of the vehicle, and a little tweeter, and of course a speaker as well. Now a couple other cool things are of course the center armrest here with your cup holders, but if you want to fit larger items, you can definitely do that. You just have to essentially fold that down and you can fit longer items, but I don't really know what you would fit in here because it's a small car. But nonetheless, it's a cool thing to add. And of course up here, I would show you, but the headliner is sagged, but there is two lights which you can control independently from the front. You do have your kind of like map lights, which are pretty unique. That's pretty much it. So let's check out the rear trunk and see what that's all about. Now, because the Golf is a proper hatchback, there is, of course, loads of space. Despite the fact that this is only a two-door, or in some cases people refer to it as a three-door because you do have the hatch here, the seats, when they fold down, you actually have quite a bit of space, surprisingly, in this vehicle. I mean, I'm kind of blown away because it doesn't seem like a whole lot, but it is. And of course, there is some extra goodies here in the back end. You do have a 12-volt power outlet on the right side with a light and a little storage cubby to put some small items. And then, of course, underneath the cover here, you do have a donut spare tire and your toolkit. Well, now I think it's time to get this GTI on the road and see how well it does. Out on the road here with this Mark 6 Golf GTI, I will tell you, it feels like you're a kid. I don't know why, but it feels like you're just some sort of young kid who's just got their license and have been given the keys to what is arguably probably one of the most fun cars you could ever think of. Now, we all know the heritage of the GTI, where it originated from back in the 70s, and, you know, even today, what it is now. Unfortunately, the Mark 8, in my opinion, I don't really think looks as good, but it probably does perform well, better than any generation before it. Now, this generation here, just in terms of road manners, it's pretty decent overall. I will say that I haven't really had a lot of gripes with it. I mean, yeah, it's not the smoothest ride ever, but it's also pretty old too. It is, you know, 15 years old and has 260,000 kilometers on it now. Now, in terms of fuel economy, this vehicle does really well in that department, if you ask me. Despite the fact that it does require 91 octane premium fuel, it does get 9.4 liters per 100 kilometers combined city and highway, which is about 25 miles per gallon. What really surprises me the most, if you get the optional 6-speed automatic DSG transmission, you get a big bump in fuel economy. You go from 9.4 liters per 100 kilometers to 8.7 liters per 100 kilometers combined city highway. So that's about 27 miles per gallon. So again, it may not seem like a whole lot, but that is without a doubt a bit of a jump. And yeah, I know more modern day automatics are quicker and more fuel efficient and all that stuff. So it doesn't surprise me that much, but just in a vehicle like this kind of old, it's kind of shocking. Now, in terms of the transmission in this vehicle, yeah, you do have the 6-speed manual transmission and you have the optional 6-speed DSG transmission, which without a doubt, of course, the automatic will be quicker, and I've heard a lot of people say that, but I do love the 6-speed manual transmission in this car. Of course, it just gives it that bit of extra personality, and the overall feel of it too is really good. It's not like a transmission that, you know, you have to put a lot of extra work in to get a little bit of fun out of. It's just very kind of, I'd say almost neutral, but in a good way, because you don't want a transmission that is, you know, has a really heavy clutch and all that stuff. I mean, you can mod these vehicles to do that, but just as a sort of well-rounded package, I feel like Volkswagen did a really good job in that aspect. In terms of steering feel, because they got rid of the hydraulic power steering, it's now electric power steering, which I actually think in this vehicle is perfectly fine. I mean, if you were to ask me the difference, I probably wouldn't be able to tell you, but in some vehicles, definitely, for sure. This one, however, it feels good. I mean, yeah, could it be a little bit heavier? Sure, but it doesn't make it any less good than it actually is. I do think that, you know, with power steering, especially electric power steering, it can be a bit numb at times, but Volkswagen nailed it pretty good in this aspect too. I feel like, you know, I'm sure even the newer generations are better. You do have obviously drive modes in the newer Golf GTIs, you have sports and all that stuff. But this one here, despite the fact how old it is, I feel like they've done a pretty good job with the steering and how it feels. You can still feel where the road is and what the wheels are doing. For a vehicle that's about 15 years old, it amazes me how well the quality is held up. I mean, yeah, it obviously some mechanical parts obviously need changing after being about 260,000 kilometers. That's to be expected, but the overall fit and finish, especially in the interior, there's no rattles, there's no shakes, there's no nothing like that. It is, of course, the exhaust you hear now, but otherwise quiet. You don't hear anything else. You don't hear a bunch of road noise. Driving vehicles like this GTI here today, it really just reminds me of how simple cars were in some aspects. Obviously, I'm sounding like an old man right now when I'm saying that, but it does honestly, I think, hold true, because a lot of new cars now, they're so numb. They just don't have any personality. It's just crammed with technology to make you a better driver, which will never make you a better driver if you ask me, no matter how much stuff you have. But this vehicle here, it still has some technology. It's not so outdated that it doesn't have anything you would need. Yeah, it doesn't have a backup camera. Yeah, it doesn't have Android Auto or Apple CarPlay or blind spot monitoring, adaptive cruise, the lot, basically. It doesn't need it. This vehicle is made for people that want to drive a proper car. Yeah, there's still some sort of digital aspect to this vehicle, but it's not invasive. It's not going to throw itself at you every time you want to have a little bit of fun. And that's totally fine. You know, it gives you enough confidence to drive a vehicle like this without needing someone holding your hand at every given moment. And I think that's lacking in a lot of vehicles today. Although a lot of us don't remember the Mark 6 generation being significantly different than the Mark 5, and of course anything special to what was succeeded in the Mark 7, I do think that this one is the Goldilocks of the bunch. It took what the Mark 5 did to reinvent the GTI name at the time and amplified it and refine it and make it into a timeless masterpiece. And if you want to dip your toes in the exciting world of fun cars without paying the luxury tax and all the headache that comes with it, a vehicle like this, like the GTI, can definitely get you there. Not only is it fun, practical, and economical, it's a great daily driver. And not to mention there's a community out there for vehicles like this and modifications. So what are you waiting for? If you are just getting out there and you have a limited budget, you can get one of these for about $7,000 Canadian or less. After you finish this video, go look for one and you won't regret it. And on that note, I want to say thank you very much for watching today's video. If you did enjoy it, please be sure to hit the thumbs up button and also consider subscribing so that way you don't miss any future videos like this and other car reviews and projects on my channel. And until next time, take care. Bye now.